All right, good night. This is part two of a presentation that um, we've been doing for a psychology class. Excuse me there. My name is Giovanni Horbert. I represent the Virgin Islands, and as part of our group, we decided that we would do a quick video synopsis of the project. And we were sharing. We did the Taylor's theory of scientific management. Um, and I just want to present that portion to you. Really and truly, the Taylor's theory of scientific management dealt in some part with motivation and how motivation works. And I'll just share briefly with you my portion and member Tashae Clark's portion verbally in this part of the Taylor's theory of scientific management. So the question posed is, what is motivation? Well, Taylor's theory was actually the first of many motivational theories in business, right? And Taylor's theory, also called scientific management, could also be called the money as a motivator theory. It was one of the first theories of motivation in the workplace. Taylor's motivation theory or scientific management, as we have established, it correlates, was one of the first theories of motivation in the workplace. In the next slides, as we are a group membership, there's a few persons in our group, we will see how motivation works. We'll be introduced to the theory. We'll see how it is applied, the pros and cons of the theory, and then we'll be given a summary of Taylor's theory here in this section of psychology. Uh, I'll go into how motivation works. As again, this is our member Tashae Clark. She may put in her slide where she's from, and any other little tidbits, as this was decided we will kind of highlight where we're from and speak in that accent and bring forth the strength of us here as West Indians. So how does motivation work? We just saw from my contribution what motivation is. Motivation, we see, happens when our dopamine spikes because we anticipate something important is about to happen. To trace the source of motivation, we first have to begin in the brain, right? This is the housing group, the central processing unit, if you may. We have to begin in the brain where neurotransmitters spark chemical messages to keep us alert and on task. These neurotransmitters carry chemical messages that play out in our brain and affect the rest of our body. One neurotransmitter that plays a role in the science of motivation is dopamine. Dopamine's chemical signal gets passed from one neuron to the next. And between those neurons, dopamine interacts with various receptors inside the synapse. All right, so when you go to the slide, you will see that there's a diagram there. And in that diagram, it will show that how the arrangement becomes more complicated when we multiply the effect through the entire brain. So an example here says, consider there are different types of receptors, neurons, and pathways that neurotransmitters can take. So things get complicated fast. For motivation specifically, it matters which pathway dopamine takes. The mesosymbolic pathway, which comes from the middle of the brain and branches to various parts like the cerebral cortex, is the most important reward pathway in the brain. Motivation works in different ways with a combination of extrinsic and intrinsic factors. Intrinsic motivators relate to us and our aspirations, while extrinsic motivators relate to outside causes. While both types of motivation are important, they have different effects on how we work. Let's look at intrinsic. With intrinsic motivation, the behavior itself becomes the reward. Examples of intrinsic motivation include cleaning our house, Why? Because we want it to be tidy, germ-free. Playing a game of soccer. Why? Because we enjoy the sport, or maybe trying to get a little workout at the same time. Reading a book about a subject that interests you. Putting together a puzzle because what? You like the challenge, you know, and maybe want to motivate someone to do the same. So, extrinsic motivation, however, is when we are inspired to perform a task, whether it be that we'll earn a reward or to avoid punishment. In the case of extrinsic motivation, we are not completing the task because we like it or find it satisfying. Instead, we complete the task because we think we'll avoid something unpleasant or we'll get something in return. And examples of those extrinsic motivation include some of the same examples that we mentioned, whether such as cleaning a house so your roommate doesn't reprimand you, playing a game of soccer because we want to win a trophy, you know, reading a book because we want to get a good grade in school, and putting together a puzzle because we want to win a prize. All right? And so those are some of the contributions to the Taylor's theory of scientific management. I hope you were able to get something today. I'm Giovanni Herbert, hailing from the Virgin Islands, Group 2.